Come on in, take a seat.
You look evil as hell. What the fuck?
Is it because I'm black?
Sure. Listen, man, just line me up.
Alright, man, I got you. This little racist piece of shit came in here all jolly and shit, so you knew I had to fuck his ass up. If you think he's already not getting play, he ain't getting any more play for the next 3 months. How do you like your new cut?
This has to be some sort of crime. And you have the audacity to email on me?
So how did it go picking up girls at a bar?
I'm somehow a registered sex offender now.